Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 1, Verse 38. Yadi apiyetena pashyanti lobhopahata chetasakulakshyakritam dosham mitradrohecha patakam. Even though their intelligence is clouded by greed, and they see no wrong in destroying the family or betraying friends. Arjuna continues to reflect on the actions of the Kauravas, noting that their minds are deluded by greed. He recognizes that they are unable to see the sin in killing their own kin and betraying familial bonds. This verse highlights Arjuna's growing inner clarity. While he recognizes the Kauravas' faults, he refuses to mirror their blindness. His sense of Dharma compels him to act differently, not out of emotion, but out of deep ethical awareness. Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 1, Verse 39. Katham na jneyam asmabhi papad asman nivartitum kulakshayakritam dosham prapashyadbhir janardana o janardana, Krishna. Why shouldn't we, who clearly see the evil in the destruction of the family, learn to turn away from this sin? Arjuna appeals to Krishna, expressing confusion as to why those who understand the grave consequences of destroying their own lineage should still engage in such acts. He emphasizes the importance of wisdom and reflection before taking violent steps. This verse deepens Arjuna's moral dilemma. Even while prepared for war, he questions the righteousness of actions that lead to family destruction. His conscience is steering him toward non-violence, urging Krishna to consider a nobler alternative. Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 1, Verse 40, Kulakshaye pranashyanti kula dharma sanatana dharme nashte kulam kritsnam adharmo bhibhavati utya. With the destruction of the family, the eternal family traditions perish. When dharma is lost, the entire family is overtaken by adharma, unrighteousness. Arjuna emphasizes the devastating ripple effect of war. The fall of a family doesn't just take lives, it uproots values, traditions, and the foundation of dharma. Without this moral compass, chaos and adharma take over. This verse reflects Arjuna's deep philosophical insight. He sees beyond the battlefield into the future of a broken society where spiritual and cultural degradation follows family destruction. His concern is not just personal, but societal. Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 1, Verse 41, Adharma bibhavat Krishna pradushyanti kulastriya strishu dushtasu varshneya jayate varna sankara. When irreligion dominates, O Krishna, the women of the family become corrupted. And with the corruption of women, O descendant of Vrishni, there arises unwanted progeny, varna sankara. In this verse, Arjuna warns of the societal consequences when dharma is lost. He believes that with moral degradation, family women become vulnerable, leading to social disorder and the breakdown of the traditional varna, social, structure. This concern reflects his fear of long-term damage to societal harmony. Arjuna is not only troubled by the act of war itself, but is deeply worried about its generational impact. His vision extends to the collapse of values and structures that preserve balance in society. Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 1, Verse 42, Sankaro narakayaiva kulagnanam kulasya cha patanti pitarohi, esham lupta pindodaka kriya. An increase in unwanted progeny leads the family and its destroyers to hell. Deprived of the offerings of rice and water, the ancestors of such families fall down. In this verse, Arjuna continues his argument against war. He expresses concern that the destruction of families causes the loss of sacred family traditions, including the rituals for ancestors. Without these offerings, the souls of ancestors suffer, and a cycle of misfortune begins, impacting both the living and the dead. This powerful verse reflects Arjuna's emotional and spiritual turmoil. He fears not just the bloodshed of war, but the spiritual consequences that ripple through generations. Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 1, Verse 43, Dosher etai kulagnanam varna sankara karakai, utsadyante jati dharma, kula dharmash chashashvata. Due to the sins of those who destroy the family and cause the mixing of social classes, the eternal traditions of caste and family duties are eradicated. In this verse, Arjuna continues lamenting the moral decay that follows war. He highlights that by killing families and disrupting the social order, the long-established traditions, both spiritual and societal, are destroyed. This leads to the collapse of righteousness and cultural values. Arjuna's dilemma is not only emotional but deeply philosophical. He is overwhelmed by the far-reaching consequences of war beyond the battlefield into the very core of Dharma and tradition. Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 1, Verse 44, Utsana kula dharmanam, manushyanam janadana, narakeniyatam vaso, bhavatityanushruma, O janadana, Krishna. We have heard that those whose family traditions are destroyed dwell in hell for an indefinite period. Here, Arjuna shares what he has learned from the scriptures and elders. He says that when the sacred family duties are ruined, people fall into spiritual ruin. Such individuals are condemned to suffer in hell endlessly, illustrating the grave consequences of disrupting Dharma. This verse emphasizes the long-term spiritual downfall that can come from short-term actions like war. Arjuna's conscience is deeply troubled, and he's trying to avoid actions that would lead to eternal suffering. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1 verse 45, Ahobata mahatpapam kartum vyavasita vayam yadraja sukhalobena hantum svajana mudyata alas. What a great sin we are prepared to commit, driven by the greed for royal pleasure and happiness, as we set out to kill our own kinsmen. Arjuna, overwhelmed with grief and moral conflict, acknowledges the depth of wrongdoing in engaging in battle against his own relatives. He recognizes that their desire for power and luxury has blinded them to the immense sin of killing their family. This verse reflects Arjuna's intense emotional and ethical turmoil. The greed for a kingdom, he admits, is not worth the price of such a heavy karmic burden. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1 verse 46, Yadimam apratikaram ashastram shastrapanaya dhartarashtra rane hanyus tanmekshimataram bhavet. In this verse, Arjuna is expressing his deep moral conflict. He states that if the sons of Dhritarashtra, who are armed and ready for battle, kill him, he would consider it better than fighting them. Arjuna's reluctance to engage in battle comes from the deep sorrow of having to fight against his own kin, teachers, and friends. He feels that it would be more righteous for him to be killed in the war than to kill his relatives, as it would bring immense sin and sorrow. Arjuna's words reflect his intense emotional and ethical turmoil. He recognizes that the pursuit of power and the kingdom cannot justify the immense karmic burden of killing his own family. This moment signifies his moral struggle before the battle, and his hesitation to engage in an act that could bring irreversible consequences, even though he knows it is his duty as a warrior. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, verse 47. Sanjaya uvaka evam uktva Arjuna sankhye rathopasta upavishat visrijya sasharam chapam shoka samvigna manasa. In this verse, Sanjaya narrates the state of Arjuna after he has expressed his moral and emotional conflict. Arjuna, overwhelmed with grief and sorrow, sits down on his chariot. He puts down his bow and arrows, the sharam chapam, and is mentally disturbed by the situation, struggling with the thought of having to fight his own kin. His mind is filled with despondency and sorrow, and he is unable to proceed with the battle. This verse marks the turning point in Arjuna's internal struggle. He is unable to continue with the battle due to his deep emotional turmoil. Arjuna's reluctance and sorrow at this moment highlight his compassion and humanity, emphasizing the intense moral dilemma he faces before the war. The verse sets the stage for Lord Krishna's counsel, which will come in subsequent verses.